Hey there, I want to welcome you to this edition of Dose of Dave. I'm David Breslow. I'm the founder of Performance Success Strategies and the author of Wired to Win. Today, I want to talk to you about a new pair of glasses, some new lenses. What do I really mean by that? What I really mean is that we all look through our own individual set of lenses every day, all day long, okay? In fact, our minds are basically an interpretation factory. We are constantly evaluating people, places, and conditions. I like that. I don't like that. I like them. I don't like them. This feels good. This feels bad. We are constantly evaluating things. That's what the mind does. It's an evaluation machine. But here's what's interesting. What many of us don't consider, and certainly when I'm talking to my clients about this, it's a real eye opener, is that we are interpreting all day long. But here's two things I want you to know about that. Number one, we see what we always see. And number two, we think we're right about it. Well, there's been a lot of psychological research on this topic. You can look it all up. You can Google it if you want. But research has found up to 80% of the time, we are misinterpreting reality. Up to 80%. That's a big number. It's a big, big number, isn't it? Think about it. As human beings, we are misinterpreting our environment, what other people say, what other people do, the gestures they make, time and time and time again. So think about what I just said. Point number one, we see what we always see. How often do you look for a buzzword or a keyword or some gesture that you've seen many, many times and you go right on autopilot? You automatically interpret that as the same thing that you always interpret it as. And that leads to point number two. Not only do we see what we always see, we think we're right about it. And that's where people get stuck. That's where we get stuck. That the fact that we think we're right about it, when in truth, many, many, many times we are not right at all. In fact, not even close a lot of times. So it's interesting that when people look at interpretations, they start to see this kind of thing. And those are the lenses I'm talking about. It's time to create or set up a new set of lenses. Now, I've worked with people who have had interpretations about some person or something for 30, 40 years. They've been holding on to them. But here's what I'd like you to know. An interpretation is the root cause factor for a feeling, which then leads to an action, which then leads to an outcome. I just gave you the performance sequence. It's not my opinion. An interpretation is the root cause. Without an interpretation, you don't trigger a feeling, which then triggers an action, which then triggers an outcome. So interpretation is at the root of this. So for example, I'm just going to make up a story. Let's say 30 years ago, Uncle Joe at Thanksgiving dinner said something really mean, really nasty to you. And for the last 30 years, you've been harboring and holding on to that of your opinion, assumption, interpretation. I'm using those words interchangeably. You've held on to your interpretation of Uncle Joe as being a jerk, let's say. Every time you think of Uncle Joe, you think jerk, okay? So every time you're around Uncle Joe, it's a little bit uncomfortable. He's uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable. Why? Because you're holding on to this interpretation. Here's what I'd like you to know about these lenses that we're looking through. They're not fixed. People are surprised by that because many people will say to me, well, it's just the way I am, Dave. I've felt that way for a long time. And my response is, it's not just the way you are. It's the way you've chosen to be. It's the interpretation that you've chosen about this person or this condition or this situation that you think you're right about. So you're going to do everything you can to hold on to it. That second point, that we think we're right, is where our intellect and our ego comes in, and we'll do anything. We'll fight to the death to hold on to that interpretation because we think we're right. But I'm suggesting to you that you may be a lot more wrong than you think about. Besides, that's not even the key point here today. The key point is that your interpretations are not fixed. They're fluid. They can change at any moment you choose to change them, believe it or not. And I've had people argue this with me for years and years and years, and that's only because they're convinced that their interpretation of Uncle Joe or whoever it is correct. But it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I don't argue with people about that. I'm only interested in showing people that it's not fixed. Just because you believed it for 30 years doesn't mean it's 30 years correct. That means you've been holding on to something that's actually not true for 30 years. So here's the deal. I'm going to ask you in this video here to change the lenses 3 times a day for the next 7 days. Just take a look at whatever situation you're in. Just notice that you're interpreting it the way you always do and see if you can come up with 1 or 2 or 3 different versions. Just try that. Try that once a day for the next 7 days. Come up with 3 different versions of that same scenario that you're used to seeing one way, but now you have 3 options. And then I'm going to ask you to pick which option that feels better to you and go with it. See what happens. Part of your mind, I'll tell you right now, your intellectual mind will fight with you because it wants to hold on to Uncle Joe being a jerk. Getting back to that example, okay? It doesn't like that you're going to change interpretations. So know right away. You're going to have a little bit of an inner battle because your old mind wants to hold on to what it's used to, what you've trained it to do. That's all that's happened. You've trained it to believe that. So it's going to want to hold on to it. It's just like a person. You know, see it just like a personality, a person in there. It wants to hold on what you've trained it to believe for 30 years. So expect that, but that's okay. I want you to take one of those 3 new interpretations, new lenses, the way you're going to look through, what you're going to look through, and see what that feels like. And notice how it changes you. Notice how it starts to change what you think, how you feel, and what you do. Because your new interpretation is the cause, the root cause for how you feel, what you do, and the outcomes you get. So it all begins with an interpretation. That's how incredibly powerful they are. Interpretations have that power to literally trigger a feeling, an action, and an outcome. Because what is an interpretation? It's just a thought. It's a thought or an image about something. That's all it is. Thoughts create. A thought triggers an emotion, which triggers an action, which triggers an outcome. It's the way it works. It's not my opinion. It's the way the human being is put together. Okay? So in this dose of Dave, I'm inviting you to check in on your interpretations and just find out for yourself that you don't have to interpret people and things the way you always do. You really don't. They're not fixed. They're only fixed because you've repeated them time and time and time again. But in reality, they're not fixed. They're fluid. Just like that, you can alter an interpretation and alter the way you feel, what you do, and the outcomes you get in that same scenario. So check it out. Try it once, at least once a day, 3 new interpretations on one particular moment, a person or condition. Give yourself 3 options. Pick the one that you like best, the one that feels the best, and go with it. Check it out. See how you feel. Look at the impact it has on how you feel, what you do, and the outcomes you get in that same scenario. So Dave Breslow, I want to thank you for hanging out with me again for this dose of Dave. And as always, you're going to see somewhere around me some pop-ups on the screen. When you see the pop-up that says, yes, it's free, click on that. It'll send you right over to the website where you're going to have free access to this terrific free training I have, the 3 secret strategies empowered people use to create the life and design the life that other people only dream about. So that's all yours, and you're welcome to it. You'll see other things on the screen here. You can subscribe. Would love to have you subscribe to the YouTube channel, where you'll find a whole bunch of other doses of Dave, and check them out. Invite your friends. Like the page, share the page, please. The more people that have access to this, the better. So that would be great if you could do that. I would appreciate it. So once again, Dave Breslow back here with you, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time on the next dose of Dave. Thank you so much. See ya.